to the Live from the Pen podcast, hosted by Smoke D, who was featured on UGK's Riding Dirty album. This ain't just a podcast, it's a movement. Live from the Pen is where the unheard get heard, where the forgotten get remembered, and where change starts with a conversation. We bring you stories from behind the walls, stories of pain, purpose, progress, and power. We're talking about men and women fighting to rebuild their lives, families trying to hold it together, and communities pushing for something better. This is an interactive prison reform platform, a place where you'll hear real voices, see real growth, and feel what redemption truly sounds like. No filters, no fake narratives. Just raw truth and the realities of incarceration, transformation, and survival. We're breaking the silence, we're breaking the stigma, and we're building bridges from the cell block to society. So tap in, stay locked with us, and be part of the change, because when we say live from the pen, we mean living proof that progress is possible, that redemption is real, and that every voice, no matter where it's coming from, deserves to be heard. For more Trill content, hit us up at trilllife7613.com and join the Trill Life community, where truth, unity, and progress always stay true. Now reporting live from the pen, your host, Smoke D.
What's happening? Live once again like before. It's your boy Smoke D, representing UGK for life, representing Trill Life for life. And today, me and the good brother Maurice got a very special brother in here today, y'all. This brother has a plethora of knowledge. He really is a young OG as it pertains to black history. He's a historian at an early age, brother. We're glad to have you here, man. Tell us a little bit about yourself.
It's good to be here. It's good to see you both again.
So,
Though we've been in touch, we haven't been in the same space in a long time.
Right.
So I'm recently relocated to Mississippi, been here as a full-time resident for about the past 3 years.
For sure.
But my family is from here, and Mississippi has always been home to me and to my family. It's the place that I used to come as a child when over the summer going to the family farm, and so I was very pleased and always intended to come back here to live here.
Right.
And so I'm glad to be here with you all today.
Yeah.
What's your name was, sir?
Oh, yes, Devin. My name is Devin Branch. Yes.
Just for the people, for the viewers.
No problem.
Yeah.
So, brother Maurice,
Yes,
what you got, baby? You feeling better from last week, huh?
Oh yeah, man. I was a little bit on the weather last week, man. But I appreciate you, man. I appreciate Devin, man, more so because he's giving me some opportunity to do some things and get involved in the Black Voters Matter movement, and then teaching me a lot about history with the Malcolm X grass movement. And so I've been learning a lot. I've been a sponge around him, man. So I'm a little bit older than him, but his knowledge on black history, I think I won't say we're equally yoked. I think we're yoked in our own way in different categories. So we just have to share our knowledge and continue to build from there. So
Right.
Right on. And just for the record, today I'm here in my personal
Yeah,
capacity,
in a
not
personal
representing
capacity,
the organization. Just here
Because
as
we
Devin.
all
appreciate that,
represent 3 different organizations, and we all do philanthropical endeavors throughout the community. Voting, registration. We what is the expungement? We do a lot of work as it pertains to the history of black people, and particularly in Mississippi. And it's it's a beautiful thing to see all 3 organizations come. But outside of that, we're representing. I am Smoke D. This is Mr. Devin Branch and Maurice
Clifton.
Clifton.
That's it. Yeah, I'm here in my individual
In
capacity.
full effect in our individual
Yes, sir.
capacity. So today, man, I wanted to touch a little bit on voting and why is it so important? Obviously, it's important because they're willing to do a lot of redlining and redistricting or whatever. First thing of it is what does a vote mean, especially for black people here in Mississippi?
Well, in Mississippi in particular, a vote can become a pathway to enhance political power. The vote is not everything, but it is a very essential thing to moving our people from the state that we have been in really since the collapse of Reconstruction to a state where we can be in political power in the state of Mississippi and really become an example of black self-determination and utilizing the ballot box to advance towards that objective. So Mississippi is the blackest state in the country, almost
Right.
40% black.
Right.
And in spite of that fact, we haven't had black elected statewide officials since Reconstruction. And that's really largely to do with the laws of Mississippi that take the rights of people to vote and make it more difficult for those who can vote to vote.
So we're talking about things about the disenfranchisement laws once you're arrested and sent to prison, those type things, right?
Absolutely. So there are some people, including like the Center for Public Integrity, that stated that in Mississippi, there's the highest rate of black people who've been disenfranchised for felony convictions. They estimated up to 16%, around 130,000 black people in Mississippi who cannot vote, who were barred from voting for life in the state of Mississippi. Now, to put that in a context, right, the last governor's race in Mississippi was decided by around 25,000 votes. So there are more than 100,000. So, when you have 130,000 people who, if you look at how most of our people vote, would have voted against the current governor had they had the ability to vote.
Right.
So if even just 1 out of every 4 of those people had the ability to vote and voted, then that would have changed the outcome of that election.
Right.
And that's one of the reasons why it's so important for those people to continue to disenfranchise and to make it difficult for us to vote. Because if our people were able to vote fully without these obstacles, the entire balance of power in the state of Mississippi could shift overnight.
Right. Okay. Well, brother.
Why is it in other states that no matter what your charge is, you never lose your right to vote? Like so many red states, so many states up north, you never lose your right to vote.
Yeah, in particular, it's 2 states, Maine and Vermont, where you can vote in prison.
Right.
And you cannot, no matter what you do. You could go to a city council meeting, shoot up the city council, go to prison, and vote for the replacement. But those are 2 of the whitest states in the country.
Right.
And so, I think
So-
if you
so
look
let-
at, go ahead.
Let me ask you this, brother. So this is not an American thing. This is a Mississippi thing that we have with the disenfranchisement.
Well, it's a Mississippi thing, but it really is, to me, still an American thing. It's just that we happen to be concentrated in Mississippi. So if you look in America, where we are at the highest rate of concentration in the Deep South, Mississippi, Louisiana, Alabama, South Carolina, Georgia,
Right.
these are the states that they have the most aggressive voter suppression laws in general. And even in other states, when people start to make gains politically, they change the law to make voting more difficult.
Right. Right.
For instance, for an example, I lived in Houston before I moved here. And in Houston, I was involved in work that made voting easier during COVID. So we worked with community groups and with members of the county government there to make, during COVID, voting accessible 24 hours a day. We had 24-hour polling situations going on. We had drive-through voting in Harris County, and that led to historic voter turnout. But many of those people who started voting were black and Latino voters who were voting differently than the people who run the state would like them to vote. And so the next year, they drafted legislation to make everything that we did to make the vote more accessible illegal. And
Well, let me ask you this, brother. Well, for some reason, it seems to me that like we putting a Band-Aid on the situation. If it's that way, couldn't we just set up like a congressional hearing to talk about like the 13th Amendment?
I mean, you could have a hearing. The issue here is that voting rights are largely controlled by the states. And there was a Voting Rights Act passed, but a lot of the protections of that Voting Rights Act have been stripped.
And
So-
and I want to make it clear for the people out there what the 13th Amendment means.
Well, 13th Amendment was the amendment that ended chattel slavery, except
You
as
go to
punishment for a crime.
And that's my
Absolutely.
point. So, except for punishment of a crime, it should incentivize America as a whole to incarcerate just to take away the vote, right? So you would be able to solve the problem by going back to the 13th Amendment, but they haven't had a congressional hearing in like over 100 years or something.
Well, it incentivized people for many reasons, to exploit the labor of people in
Right.
particular.
Mhm.
You
Not
know,
necessarily the vote, but more so the labor. That's more so on the labor end than the free labor that they was getting, and how you got people what is it, Emite County up in the Mississippi Delta Parchment, how they did convict leasing in the 1800s and got rich during harvest season. You know, they created vacancy laws and laws that lock them and send 13, 14, and 15 years old to the penitentiary for 6 months. When harvest season was over, they was through and they could go.
Yeah.
But then, so the laws are set up like when you go to prison, it's pretty much over for the vote for life, right?
Depending on your offense in
Right.
Mississippi, that's the case. You can lose your right to vote without ever going to prison in Mississippi. There are people who were convicted of felony charges and didn't do prison time. But if you're convicted of one of the, and there are around 20 offenses.
23.
Offenses that you
23
can lose your right to vote for life, and then getting them restored becomes a challenge. But the situation that Maurice was talking about with respect to the exploitation of labor in the prison, is not just something that happened in the 1800s, right? Like Maurice, when you were in prison, what kind of work were you doing in the prison?
Prison labor, Unicorp. It's called Unicorp. We were making we had the government contracts where we were making the helmets, making the uniforms, everything for the military, making the furniture for we had GSA contracts to where we made everything for the military. We made helmets for foreign countries. So at Beaumont between 2000 and 2005 when I was there, it was making so much money that the factory manager and the assistant factory manager and the quality manager, all of them got fired because they was making side money from the different people that they was contracting to with the paint. We made a profit of $69 million a year for 3 years in a row.
How much did you get paid?
I was getting paid $1.15 an hour. $1.15 an hour. You get them to about $180 a month.
$180 a month, right?
Right.
And they're making a profit of $69 million.
$69 million a year. Yeah.
You see, it's a good business.
Yeah.
So you can't get the same job that you had in there out here, can you?
Everywhere I went, they said I was overqualified. I did SAP for 19 years. I worked on.
Can you tell people what the SAP is so they know?
It's a government program. It's called SAP. Some people call it SAP. Some people call it SAP. But it's a German software that deals with production. Any company that has SAP is going to pay upwards of $30 to $40 an hour for any job in their factory. Aerodyne uses SAP. The Mississippi Department of Correction in their business office uses SAP. So it's a software program, a German software program designed for manufacturing and finance. A lot of people with big financial companies like Merrill Lynch, they use SAP. But everywhere I went said I was overqualified, but I didn't have a job.
And how long did you do that work?
19 years. I did it 19 years. I did finance, I did production, I did quality on SAP, and so I even worked some people since I've been home through their problem. And the plant manager told me it would have cost them $100,000 just to get a SAP analyst out to go through their system and fix their system. And I fixed it in 5 minutes. So he said, "No, we can't give you the job as a regular for $45,000 a year." When I first got home, just doing what they call factory move, shop move within the factory, move materials up. But they wanted me to work in the business office where I did scheduling on SA. I told them I know how to do scheduling. I, was part of the study team that set it up. And so the lady who was in the business office in human resources never put my application because she was the scheduling manager.
Yeah,
She only went to school for 2 months.
Let me get in. Listen, y'all, the call lines are open. You can contact us at 601-387-2684. Again, it's 601-387-2684. And we're accepting calls in. We got the good brothers here. If you have some pertinent questions that you need answered, we're here. Live from the pen once again.
Yeah.
So what was you saying, brother?
And so I think that, and it's a lot of guys, man. And I went to several institutions on institution need just to set up their factory. So I got certified in quality auditing. I got certified as a quality auditor from the street, not from inside. We had outside independent agencies to come. I got ISO 9000, ISO 9001, so Lean Six Sigma, which is real big out here in the street. So I got certified in all those things and still have that. I could never lose my quality assurance license because I took the test. It's one of the hardest tests that you could ever take.
So brother, what are we doing here? Why is it, so much sameness as it pertains to, like, we've been fighting, we've been trying to overcome since overcame, and we still haven't been able to manage to change the difference, whether Democratic or Republican votes are an illusion of a false choice or not. The society that we continue to live in as black people, for the most part, it kind of just remains the same kind of
Well,
difference.
ultimately speaking,
So what are we doing?
we're still governed by the people who enslaved you. And
Come on,
and
come
that's
on
just
with it. Say that again.
the reality of the situation, in particular in Mississippi. We had, the slave economy prior to the Civil War, and then we had a brief period during Reconstruction, where there was a flowering of black political and economic development in Mississippi, really unlike almost anywhere else. There were things that happened elsewhere, but this was the epicenter of black political advancement in Mississippi. We had black United States senators during Reconstruction, and we haven't had one since. And at that time also, we were the majority of the electorate, and about 90% of black eligible voters were registered to vote and voted. And so that was another aspect of that power. But the truth is, after Reconstruction, we were put back basically in the same political position that we were in, completely divorced from access to political power. And that's really been the case ever since on the state level. We've had municipal and county level power, but there are no municipalities or counties in the United States Constitution. The real power is divided between the state and the federal government. And though we've been the majority in different cities and in different counties, since we could vote, we've been the minority in every single state. But in particular, even though we've been a large section of the minority population in Mississippi, when we are large numbers, like we are in Mississippi, what you tend to have is polarization, where when there's a threat of our people being able to take over the political power of a state, then the white population votes largely as a block. So, for instance, when Barack Obama ran for president, Mississippi's 40% black, he got 40% of the vote. That means that the supermajority, roughly 90% of the black people in Mississippi vote one way, 90% of the white people vote the other way. If there was even a relatively small shift of the white population voting in a more progressive direction, then we would be the supermajority of a new coalition that could govern the state of Mississippi. But that hasn't happened hitherto. And what you find, and it's not just a Mississippi issue, it's an issue really to me of national oppression, that we're a people. And it might not be something that people like to talk about, but really, in my opinion, we're a nation. And and our oppression is not just discrimination on the base of our skin color, it's national oppression. And wherever you find that in the world, even when you don't have a racial difference, you don't have groups aligning along class lines across national lines. They align those who are even poor, but a part of the oppressor society, defend the interest of the oppressor society, even if it's against their own class interest. So, like, we have this in Mississippi. And in Mississippi, it's a black and white issue. In Ireland, for instance, there you have two white communities, of one Catholic, one Protestant, one nationalist, one aligned to the United Kingdom. But it's the same dynamic. The people who are effectively settlers defend the interest of the broader
So
power structure.
basically what you're saying is the indifferences are always going to keep us separated or divided to some degree.
Not necessarily. I think it's possible for that to be overcome, but I don't think that it will be overcome primarily through trying to win over parts of the oppressor community. I think that the primary focus needs to be on building our own power and engaging our own communities and encouraging our own people to get out to vote. Because even though we have 130,000 black people, according to that study, disenfranchised for felony convictions in Mississippi for life, we had, more than 3 times the number of voters, black voters, who would have been needed to change the outcome of the governor's race, registered to vote in Mississippi, who did not vote. So even without one additional white voter, we could have changed the outcome of that race, provided that our people felt that their interests were so tied to engaging in the political process that they would have voted.
Brother, hold that thought. We're going to go to a commercial break, and we'll be back right back shortly. Once again, like before, it's live from the pen. Y'all stay tuned. We'll be right back.
Advertise on WeBelieve.Global, a brand new digital media platform. Share your brand with our audience on our many global live stream TV broadcasts and over the radio. For more info, visit WeBelieve.Global or call 800-492-5186, option 1.
The Mississippi Link is an African-American female-owned newspaper with a trusted voice that is highly respected throughout the city, state, and nation. Our motto, keepers of the knowledge for people who speak the truth, since 1993. Link significantly influences the thoughts, attitudes, and buying decisions of its readers. Call us at 601-368-8481 for your advertising needs. If you would like to receive a newspaper in the mail each week, our annual subscription is only $52 per year. That is only $1 per week for you to stay informed regarding many stories that you can only get in the Mississippi Link. Sign up today at themississippilink.com and click on Home Delivery.
Live from the pen once again, like before we back. This your boy Smoke D. The call-in lines are open. You can reach us at 601-387-2684. Again, that is 601-387-2684. The lines are hot and they open. Y'all call in. Okay, brother. You were speaking of a real oppressive, systematic situation there. That I mean, of course, it's unfair, and I guess I'm trying to grasp from you what does the answer look like? What is the beginning of it? Like what we doing now, what you do, traveling all over the state. It's got to be more, right?
Absolutely.
Because you don't want to have this job for life. You want to get some corrective stuff done so we want to,
Absolutely. Though I will have the job for life in the sense of being involved in the struggle for black self-determination. So that is a thing. That's a lifetime commitment. So as long as I live, I don't think that's something that I'll retire from. Because even if we are able to overthrow this dynamic, we'll still have challenges. And I'd like to think that I might be of some use in that situation too. So I'm not intending to retire, but I would certainly like to be involved in dealing with other issues other than fighting for the most basic rights of people.
That's it.
But part of it is, yes, we do need to be more civically engaged and politically organized. We do need to begin to increase our electoral engagement, but that is not sufficient. So voting alone will not bring us freedom. Voting is one tool that we can use to help advance us towards freedom, but there are so many other things that we need to do if we're actually going to be a free people.
Right.
Because, for instance, though we can do a lot of things through the vote alone won't address other significant issues that we have in our communities, and the economic problems that we have in our communities, some of which really are almost impossible to resolve without changing the entire economic system.
Where do we start? Do we start with the children? I seen something today to where they changing the YNs to YGs, like young gentlemen. Actually, it's like a sweater you have on the quarter thing tie, and these young guys, they're starting to dress up. They're starting to not be, the opposite of thuggish, I guess, if that's what you would say.
Yeah, but that's a fad.
That's just a fad, you think?
To mislead, I think to throw us off track. The real issue is like when most of those people are not even eligible to vote yet. You understand? We need to start teaching them in elementary school the power of voting, and how in elementary school we voted for everything. We had to cast a ballot, whether it was for, you know, second grader, Mr. Miss second grade, we had to actually do a ballot. You know what I mean? And then they would read the tally on the loudspeaker in the classroom. So we have to teach kids the value and the importance of voting and what your one vote means, you know, to them. And as far as the disenfranchisement, a lot of guys just don't know that they can get their rights to vote back. They won't even look. They hear felon and they think that what they're in prison for, they can't vote because they haven't looked at it. They haven't been educated to know that they can. I voted absentee ballot from 2005 all the way until I got out every year. And I did like classes to show guys how to write their state and ask for the ballot so that they could vote absentee ballot. And we would go through the law library and take them up to the mail room and mail them out to the respective states for every election. So
I was just thinking about what the brother said and the seriousness, you know, in your eyes when you say what you're saying. And I wish that, you know, for both of y'all, we could convey that to more people in a together way, because I mean you're doing a lot, I'm sure. You're doing a lot, I'm sure. But I mean I guess the horrors is plenty and the workers are few, you know.
The workers are fewer than are needed at present, but also the work is not being necessarily done in the most efficient manner because there's not a consolidation of efforts behind a strategic plan to change the power dynamic in Mississippi. You know, and voter turnout is a very good thing, but the purpose of voting is not just to vote. The idea is that we need to be struggling for power, and voting is one aspect of that. But there are other aspects of it. So like, for instance, during the legislative session when they passed, where they expanded the powers of the Capitol Police throughout Jackson and gave them primacy of policing in some areas, including the area that I live in, and which gives them the power to set up checkpoints. I've been stopped and taken out of my car at checkpoints, you know, set up by Capitol Police. And so, which is something that I certainly am not pleased about, you know, and we fought. Some of us were involved in a campaign to stop that, to defeat that. Of course, it still passed in the legislature. Even though every black, and this shows the limitations of municipal power. The mayor at that time was opposed to the expansion of the Capitol Police power. The city council was opposed. I believe even the sheriff might have been opposed. But every black representative, I think failing one in the state legislature, was opposed. And nevertheless, that was imposed on us by the state.
How many states have a system set up like that? Are we the only
I
one?
don't know about with respect to Capitol Police having the same kind of power over the municipal police. But one of the unfortunate things that happened was that there was a united opposition to this, really among black people in Jackson. But over time, people started to accept it. And over time, people started to, even though they know it was an imposition by people who have not our interest at heart, right? Tate Reeves and these other people who were pushing for these initiatives have no interest in advancing the collective interests of our people. But people would say things like, well, when you call the Capitol Police, they come. And people in Jackson, we had a Kwanzaa event last year, and one of the biggest issues that kept being raised was safety. I don't feel safe. Somebody broke into my house. Someone broke into my car. One of the things that we ultimately need to do here in Jackson and everywhere where we exist is not be dependent upon the police, in particular not the Capitol Police or any sort of alien, really occupying hostile force to provide security in our community. This has to be something, ultimately speaking, that we begin to take greater responsibility for ourselves.
We
It
should
is
be
very
policing ourselves.
Absolutely, because it is very difficult. As we saw when people, after the 2020 uprisings that happened around the country and people started talking about defund the police, it is very difficult to get acceptance on a mass level for that if there's no alternative to provide protection for people in the community. They may, some aspects, some people in community might support those calls for a short period of time. But it's easy for that to be reversed when the attention has died down if people don't feel secure. And we have in our community a capacity to change that situation. You know, it is not impossible for people in the community to provide most of the protection that they need for themselves. And the person who lives next door to you can respond to an issue that you're dealing with a lot faster than the fastest police officer.
Yeah,
And
so-
can do it in a manner that's much more careful because the person who lives next door to you can know the people involved and can. I've known situations where people have called the police to deal with the security situation. Police see them and just see another nigger, and end up attacking the person who called the police.
Right. It's the relativity that you speak of. We can solve our own problems better in our own community because we have the relativity of that community.
Absolutely.
What you think on that? What's your take on that, bro?
I wholeheartedly agree, man. I think that the thing is having neighborhoods come together and agree upon this.
Hmm.
You know what I mean? And I think that we don't need to hire outside people to patrol our neighborhoods. You know, because there are camera systems that you can set up, and people like in St. Louis, it was a neighborhood that once that got a city ordinance to start putting at 10 o'clock, 11 o'clock, they started putting the bars in the street. And you couldn't ride through the neighborhoods. You had to go almost around if you didn't live in that neighborhood. You know, it was a certain way that you could come in and go out.
You come up with your own security
You come up with that.
protocol for
Right.
each individual
And they were
neighborhood.
serious about it.
Absolutely.
And it changed the whole
That's,
neighborhood.
that's a way to look at it, bro. I
Mhm.
mean,
Community is the real answer. Community with a mind
Together.
towards self-determination and self-governance is the answer. Not more. You can't police yourself out of a social problem. You can increase the police budget. Really, we can't afford it, to be honest. That is a huge portion of every municipal budget is the police, and of course fire, but in particular the police.
yeah.
And there's always a push to increase that. But when you have a city and communities, wherever we live in large numbers, with a few exceptions, the masses of our people live in poor and working class communities that are strapped for resources, where they're cutting programs, essential programs in education and social services. And one of the largest expenditure, in many cases the largest line item, is the police. And if we could cut that dramatically, if we could reinvest those resources in other services, we could change the quality of life for people.
Indeed.
And one other issue we have is that a lot of situations that shouldn't require police, but we have a lot of mental health issues where we could have perhaps a non-police emergency response, where the
Yeah.
person who's even doing an action that might be criminal really isn't a criminal,
Maybe
but is a person in the
mental
middle
health
of a
sys-
mental
system.
health crisis.
Yeah, system
And
set in
this
place.
happened not too long ago on my street, where there was an individual who was he was dealing with addiction issues. He was trying to break in a neighbor's car. We saw this person, and myself and others intervened to stop the situation and sent him on his way. He came back, and then we had a dilemma. We couldn't let it ride, because now you are posing, we warned you, you're posing an additional danger to the community. And so we had to intervene. And we intervened in a way that didn't involve the police. But eventually one of the neighbors was saying, look, and one of the neighbors called the Capitol Police. And the Capitol Police did come, and the person was arrested. But the person didn't really need to go to jail.
Correct.
That person needed to be, if there were a non-police emergency response
They could-
situation that people could have called, where he could have access to a mental health professional,
Right.
maybe be shepherded into a drug rehabilitation program, as opposed to just taken into a cell and
Yeah.
released no better than he was when he went into the cell.
Maybe this should be a part of the arrest process. Just don't take them straight to jail. Take them to psych evaluation or something. Use some of that money to kind of, because I mean, if you look at the state of incarceration, at least in this state, statewide, most of these dudes would probably not even need to be in jail because of their mental capacity. You know, they don't have anything in place to.
Absolutely. There's a huge number of people in local jails, state penitentiaries, and federal prisons who are of no danger to anybody in our community and could be safely released tomorrow.
Right.
And not only not harm our community, but in some cases be an asset to our community.
Yeah.
But we are not in a position to make that decision. And that's one of the reasons why we have to, yes, be engaged in the electoral process, but also I think it is going to take a mass struggle of the level that the civil rights movement to challenge some of the things that we have to deal with in the state of Mississippi. The voting is essential, but we also have to remember that we won the right to vote without the right to vote.
Yeah.
And so
that's
you
why.
can, the idea that you can't make political change outside of the ballot box, I think, is a mistaken one. That we shouldn't just,
Yeah, I think
we
that
shouldn't just
like
say
we,
that. Just vote. And
it
then
feels like
that'll
to
be
me
sufficient.
like we should be in panic mode based on what you're saying. Like we just in a comfortable state with this. We can walk and go drink water and come back to a meeting, and you know, and I feel like, you know, based on what I'm hearing, there should be more.
A greater sense of urgency.
Yeah, a greater
Which
sense
I
of-
would prefer to panic. You know, I think we should have a greater sense of
Yeah.
urgency. I don't think we should panic. But,
Well,
I
yeah.
do think we should recognize that this is not a situation where we're not on the clock. We're not on the time clock. You can reach a situation that is so degraded that your ability to reverse it becomes near impossible. So we don't have forever, in my opinion, to turn this situation around. I believe if we don't make a qualitative shift within the next 10 years, making that shift will become ever more difficult because the distance between us and power will get ever greater, especially now that you're in an economic system where information economy is growing,
Right.
where the skills that we and the jobs that people who are working class black people have relied upon are becoming less and less a factor. You know, we don't just have automation, we have artificial intelligence, which is not only causing havoc to our environment, because water usage required for these situations is extreme. And that could
Taking our
pose a real
jobs.
threat to us here in Mississippi. But it can also take the jobs that people
Taking
have
our
been,
jobs,
that
it's
people
one.
still have. You know, as people lost some aspects of work, people started doing things like customer service jobs, but now AI could do that.
Yeah.
You know, and that's why it's so important who controls and who owns the things that produce the things.
Right.
Because if you are in an ownership position, that's great. But if you are not, then that's a horrible situation. It's kind of like I have my family from Mississippi. Some of them own land, some of them didn't. And so they had machines, you know, all of them were working before they had any kind of significant mechanization of agriculture. My grandmother used to just pick cotton barefoot in
Right.
Mississippi, you know, and the boys in the family couldn't really go to school during any planting season, harvest season. In some
Right.
cases, period. They went to school long enough to learn how to read, and then in some cases they were just in the fields. But when machines came, and including machines that helped pick cotton, those people who were field hands in our family really suffered from that situation, because the only thing that they weren't picking cotton because they loved it, it was the thing that they could do. And when the machine replaced their labor, they were just out. They were destitute. But there were other people who owned the land. And so when a machine could come and help that they could afford to buy, when they could afford to buy tillers and other things, that freed them up to pursue other things, to go to school, to pursue even higher education. But that's because they owned the land. So the difference between having ownership and just being a person who is just subject to the dictates of the people who have the ownership is all the difference in the world. And a technological advance, if you control it, if you control the land, is new opportunity.
Yeah.
But if you're just a laborer in that same situation, then that advance
We don't
can
own
lead to
anything.
immiseration for you, can lead to impoverishment for you. And that's one of the reasons why, even if we were to vote 100% and take down the Mississippi state flag and put up a new African flag,
Yeah,
unless we change the structure of the economy,
it's not gonna work.
we would still be ruled by the same people who have been our historic oppressors, because they still would control the
They would own.
means of
Yeah.
life
Yeah.
in the state. So we need political change. We need change on a security level. We need economic change. And to me, ultimately speaking, we need to move aggressively towards self-determination. And to me, that doesn't mean that we need to do that exclusively. That doesn't mean that there's no place for people who don't look like us
Right,
in a new Mississippi.
right.
But we need a new Mississippi where, yes, whites should be, anyone who lives here should be able to stay here and be welcomed in that new Mississippi, whether they're white or Latino or Asian or from the Middle East, from anywhere. But just not boss. You know,
Exactly.
I'm not advocating for us to be anti-white people,
Right.
but just anti the master-slave relationship that has
Mental-
existed
the
between our
mentality.
people and other people in the
Right.
state of Mississippi, and really in the United States of America.
Yeah, not black or white, wrong or right.
So do you think that master-slave relationship is still prominent in Mississippi?
Absolutely. And whether or not, and it doesn't matter if some of the attitudes have softened. All you have to do is go to the state capitol during the legislative session, during when they were
see.
voting on things like the Capitol Police.
Mhm.
And you can see every black person say no. And it affects us. Everybody who's white say yes. And what they say goes. What they say went. Who cares about your black mayor? Who cares about your black city council? Who cares about your blackest city in America, the population of the blackest city in America? Who cares what any of our elected representatives or our residents think?
It means nothing.
They have the power, and you don't. And they use that power to advance their interests at your expense. They do it in the electoral arena. They do it in the prison. They do it in every aspect of our lives. They do it at the job.
The restaurant.
Yeah, everywhere. You cannot do anything almost. You can't cut a black person's hair in the state of Mississippi without a stamp of approval from the state.
Oh, bro.
You know, so
Yeah.
you can't, you know, so,
I want in.
you know, so we have to change that dynamic.
Right.
And without taking power, nothing else matters.
Indeed.
Not, all these other things are nice things, but divorced from power. You can be. Education is important. There were educated slaves. There were people who were enslaved, much more educated than the people who held them in bondage. Many of our people were enslaved because of the skill sets that they had in the place that they were taken from.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it wasn't lack of education that put us in this situation.
Overqualified.
Yeah, again, overqualified. Because the people who were in the position, when he wasn't overqualified or underqualified, when they were working you for how many cents an hour or
misusing
everything.
them, yeah.
Yeah. From starting at 23 all the way to 115 an hour.
That was what you maxed out at, right?
Right.
$115 an hour for a job that pays on the street over.
6 figures.
Yeah, 6 figures. And then to do that job for over a decade and to come out of prison
And not
unable
be
to
able to get
find
that
a
job.
job.
That's crazy. And that overqualified, I understand what it means. Yeah.
Yeah.
Like,
Just-
ain't no way I'm gonna put you in this position. And I've been going to school for. She had been going to school for 6
You're
months.
overqualified. You can't raise up. We're not gonna let you.
And I
You're.
have been doing scheduling for about 4 or 5 years at the time because it was only 6 years old. So I had been doing it like 5 years. But but she had only went to school for maybe 6 months, and she was still learning. So they would have to pay a SAP analyst to come from Florida to show them how to fix a problem. And every time they came, they charged them anywhere between $10,000 and $100,000, depending on the size of the problem.
Oh, man, we got a little bit left. Y'all want to call in? Give us a call in at area code 601-387-2684. Again, that's 601-387-2684. Give us a call.
Yeah, but see, if we controlled the state, if there was a shift in power in the state, that means contracting for the state. That means the job he was doing as a prisoner can be something that he oversees as a civilian with a contract with the state, or as a state employee making a decent living wage, where a person who is qualified to make a 6-figure salary, and where there were openings to do it, just can't get it because they just won't let him have it, has to then struggle to be able to make ends meet for himself and his family.
Control.
And that's not a situation that you're unfamiliar with, right?
Tough.
You know, we have many, many, many people who are much more qualified than many other people who have the positions that allow them to feed their family without ever having to think about crime.
Right.
And we just can't get in the door for it. Not because we aren't prepared to do it. But
Overqualified.
yeah, overqualified, underqualified, whatever they say you are, to say no to you is what you will be. Whatever it is, whatever you have to be for them to stay where they are and you to stay where you are, that's what you will be.
Yeah, you will be that. Control.
You know.
What is that, like the critical race theory?
Well, no, the critical race theory is something that was,
Where they
a legal
we're gonna
thing,
do the
but
same thing.
but that's the nature of national oppression. That's the nature of being governed by your historical oppressor. Whatever the opportunity is goes to the master's son before it goes to you.
Yeah, they're not gonna help us see if they've been making money off of us being blind.
Absolutely.
Don't make sense.
Nobody voluntarily relinquishes power. And that's one of the situations that when there's been some talk in Mississippi about the legislative sessions that come up. And there are some people who say, we need to oppose these things, but quietly, because there's some good people or some more reasonable Republicans who will help us get able to vote, who will help us expand the voting rights, provided that you niggas stay quiet.
Yeah.
And don't upset the apple cart, and let us professional people
Yeah, it's
handle these conversations.
Yeah.
You know, and cede all of the initiative to that class of people, and tell the working class, regular people who are the ones most impacted by these things to stay quiet.
Yeah.
You know, and that's a losing strategy,
Yeah,
because
he's
even if
still-
it wins, you lose. Because if something that is supposedly in your interest is won by somebody else, they are the people who get the increase in power. When you fight your own battle and you win, you get stronger.
Right.
Don't let that was something a long time ago Malcolm X used to say, stop letting them speak for you and stop letting them fight for you. Because if you let them fight for you and they win, they win. But if they lose, you lose.
Yeah, you lose even if they win.
Even if they win, you lose. Because you haven't gained in power. You haven't gained in organization. You haven't gained in capacity to run your own affairs. And that is how we move from where we are towards freedom. We have to also develop, that's another reason why elections also matter. We have to develop the capacity to be self-governing, which means we have to develop the capacity to do all the things that are required of a free and independent people. If we can't run the water system, if we can't run every aspect of life ourselves, then we will always be subject to the dictates of those people who can. And that's one of the ways that when people fought and won bloody struggles for independence in Africa and other places, where they defeated the direct colonial rule and found themselves caught up in a neo-colonial rule, because after fighting to get out the colonizer, they needed the colonizer to come back to run the infrastructure of the society. And so, but without control of the state, we won't have education towards developing that capacity because they control that too. So, so they'll take out programs that give you the concrete skills that you need to build and run a society.
Right.
Everybody's grandparent worked on a farm,
Oh, bro.
and most people can't grow nothing. You know, there are many people from our communities who don't have that very basic skill. How do you to garden? How do you help to push back against?
When to plant, yeah.
Yeah.
And that's the lost art of our history in the generation. But brother, we gonna tap this off right now. So if there's any parting words you would like to convey to the people out there in internet, TV, radio land, feel free to do so now, man.
Well, just thank you for your time. It's always good to see you
Man,
and Brother Maurice.
you did the thing.
And that to me, the struggle is always for land and independence.
Yeah, Brother Maurice.
And it
You
will
got any
remain so
parting words?
until freedom is achieved.
Say that again, brother, for the people.
That we should be struggling for political power, for land, and for independence. And we,
Land.
yes,
That's it,
absolutely.
Yeah.
Land is
Land.
the basis of independence.
Ownership of land. We had Brother Tinker on here last week talking about ownership, and we're gonna keep talking about that ownership, brother.
Both
You
individual but collective as well.
yeah, no doubt. Brother Maurice, you got any departing words before we dip?
Well, I think also that we need to focus on making a way for those men and women who are coming home, from incarceration, from prison, and to get them better health care resources while they're in prison. Because Mississippi is painting a lie like everything is okay when it's not. I was just listening to Devin when he was saying about the guy was having a mental episode, but they sent him to jail. Well, more jails, especially Raymond and Hines County, and MDOC got more drugs than they have on the street, and more powerful. But they're not treating them inside. They're giving them RVRs to take away their time and strip away their time so they can keep them in longer.
Right.
You know what I mean? So you see, I've seen people of other races with 16 felonies only got 6 or 7 years. He don't have the habitual because it's the powers that has the choice to charge him with the habitual or not. But you see a black guy with 2 felonies and a misdemeanor, he got the habitual for attempted break-in of a building. His sentence started at 25 years mandatory. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So
I think we as a people, man.
yeah, so it's
We
a misguided
need to start
concept.
thinking together and working together and start spending our money together. Like, take a break from this system.
Yeah, the fundamental reason our oppression continues is that we
We
As a
funded
people,
our own oppression.
and we lack the power to control our lives. And the fundamental way to gain that power is collective action towards self-determination and sovereignty
And independent.
and independence.
Tastes like chicken, brother.
Free the
Well,
land.
fried chicken. That's today's episode live from the pen once again, like before. I'm your main man, Smoke D, representing UGK for life. We got Brother Sip here, Brother Devin, Independent Branch, very educated brother, man. We hope y'all enjoyed the show. We hope y'all were greatly informed. Until next time, stay up.
Welcome to the Live from the Pen podcast, hosted by Smoke D, who was featured on UGK's Riding Dirty album. This ain't just a podcast, it's a movement. Live from the Pen is where the unheard get heard, where the forgotten get remembered, and where change starts with a conversation. We bring you stories from behind the walls, stories of pain, purpose, progress, and power. We're talking about men and women fighting to rebuild their lives, families trying to hold it together, and communities pushing for something better. This is an interactive prison reform platform, a place where you'll hear real voices, see real growth, and feel what redemption truly sounds like. No filters, no fake narratives. Just raw truth and the realities of incarceration, transformation, and survival. We're breaking the silence, we're breaking the stigma, and we're building bridges from the cell block to society. So tap in, stay locked with us, and be part of the change, because when we say live from the pen, we mean living proof that progress is possible, that redemption is real, and that every voice, no matter where it's coming from, deserves to be heard. For more Trill content, Hit us up at trilllife7613.com and join the Trill Life community, where truth, unity, and progress always stay trill. Now reporting live from the pen, your host, Smoke D.